All right, good morning, everybody. Today is Daf Tzadi Ches, Masechah Shabbos. So we left off, I believe, at the bottom, the two lines from the bottom on Tzadi Zayin Amud Beis. So Taner Rabbanan Hazarek Mirshus Harabim. So continuing with being one who throws from one Rishus to the other, and he throws it from a Rishus Harabim to Rishus Harabim. The Rishus Hayachad B'Yamtza, and according to this brisa, the brisa brings a case where there's a Rishus Hayachad in the middle. So there's a private domain in the middle, and then someone throws from one public way to another public way through a private domain. Dalad Amos. If it is so he says if it goes Dalad Amos, then Chayiv Pachos. If it went Dalad Amos, and as Rashi explains over here. Through tziruf. In other words, let's say one of the public ways was he was standing 2 amos away from the private domain. So it traveled Dalad Amos in Rishus Harabim, okay? But the Rishus Harabim was 2 in the one he was standing in, and then the person who caught it was 2 amos deep in the other Rishus Harabim. So he's chayiv for throwing something Dalad Amos in Rishus Harabim. Okay. Well, obviously, I have to see why he's not chayiv for transferring from Rishus Harabim into Rishus Hayachid and then back from Rishus Hayachid into Rishus Harabim. But if it totals Dalad Amos, the distance traveled through a Rishus Harabim, even if it's 2 separate Rishuyos, and the 2 Rishus Harabim were separated by Rishus Hayachid, he is chayiv. Pachais mi'arba Amos. But if it's less than Dalad Amos, then he is pater. Why? Because he didn't go ahead and take it from Rishus Harabim into Rishus Hayachid because it didn't stay there, and also it didn't travel for a total of Dalad Amos. So my kamashman, what's the chiddush? The truth is over here it's big chiddush, right? Ha kamashman, 2 things: Rishuyos mitzdarfos. First of all, the 2 Rishuyos are mitzdarif. In other words, we do add the total distance traveled between the 2 Rishus Harabim. So if you have 3 and 1 and 1 of the other, that combines to be a total of 4 amos and Rishus Harabim, and therefore one will be chayiv. And also we say the amrina and kluta udelo amrina. We have to have the aleph there, right? So we say, and we don't say, right? And amrina kluta kamoshunach, right? And we also say that he is not chayiv for going to for transferring, right? So in other words, so we said we say that it's not considered as if it landed there. So even though, despite the fact it traveled in the air through the Rishus Hayachid, it is not considered like it stopped in the Rishus Hayachid, and therefore basically we ignore, according to this opinion of the Brisa, we ignore the Rishus Hayachid in the middle, and therefore one is not chayiv for being machnis or being moitzi, and therefore he's only chayiv a total of, if there is a total of Dalad Amos traveled in Rishus Harabim, then he is chayiv. So now 2 dots, 3 lines from the top. Now we're about to get off on a tangent. So Amar Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda, Amar Rabbi Abba, Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav Hamavir Dalad Amos Rishus Harabim Mekura Pater. That which we say, one who carries in Rishus Harabim is only in a Rishus Harabim that is not covered, that is not a covered area. However, if it is covered, then he is pater. One is not chayiv for being mavir of Dalad Amos Rishus Harabim if it's covered. Why? Because it's not similar to the way that they traveled in the midbar. The way they traveled in the midbar, right? They were public ways, and the public ways were not covered. So therefore, in order to be chayiv for being mavir Dalad Amos Rishus Harabim, you have to go ahead and be in an uncovered area. Eini is a so v'ha'agalos t'mekurin havi. The wagons were considered to be covered, right? In other words, or if one was underneath certain areas of the wagons, right? Now, the wagon, what were the wagons used for? As we're soon going to see, that we're going to discuss today, we're all going to be discussing crushim, right? The pillars that were used, that the Mishkan was built upon. Now, remember, the Mishkan was built on a pillar system all the way around, basically on 3 sides, with the coverings over, and they used to build them, put them apart, and then when you take them apart, they would take them apart and put them on the wagons. So they would put them on the wagons, as we mentioned before, there was actually 4 wagons, 2 sets of 2. There were 48 total crushim, right, which would basically be 12 pillars per wagon. Now, So we'll soon see how they were transported and how they were loaded. Now, let's see. So first of all, we have a brayso that says V'amra Rav Meshum Reb Chia Agalos Tachteim Uveneim Etzedeim B'Shis Rabim. Right. Some now, those of you have the art scroll here. There's some good pictures coming up that we can use. So it mentions over here that the wagons underneath them, and underneath the wagons themselves, Ubenehem, between the wagons, right, Vitzidehen, and their sides. So now, underneath the wagons is under the wagon itself. Benehem, between them, right, if those of you have the picture on the art scroll, 98A1. So there's a picture of there were two wagons side by side, and the boards would go, right, they would go the long way, right, if this is the wagon, I guess here, because I can see. So the boards were on top. And if you have two wagons side by side, so therefore there is space basically between this side of the boards of this wagon and the boards of the other wagon next to it. So therefore two, right, so the boards in between, that's called Benehem, between them. The Tzedehem, and even the sides, the Tzedehem is not referring to the other opposite sides, rather referring to is Shalom there in the Brisa, but basically underneath the wheels area as shown, the area by the wheels is shown in that picture. So all those were considered Rishus Rabbim. And now, once again, if we're talking about the boards, right, so it's underneath those items. So that's covered, right? So if that area is covered, so then we see that the Rishus Rabbim was covered in those child in the midbar. So Gemara answers no. Kikama Rav bedrasa. So he says no. Rav is talking about in the spaces in between the boards, right? If we go ahead and we see that there are spaces that the boards did not go the entire wagon. Now the wagons will soon see, right, what the layout of the boards in the wagon were. So now the Gemara wants to analyze it. So Michli, Orcha de Agola Kamahavi. How long was the wagon? What was the length of the wagon? Chamesh Amma. All right. Now we're gonna have to do a little bit of math. Okay. So it was 5 amos. Now each amma is 6 tfachim. Okay, we're going with amma 6 tfachim. So how many amos was it? It was 5 amos. All right. So puta de keresh kamihavi. And how wide were the boards? Right. Havi amto palga 1.5. Right. They were 1.5 wide. All right. So now if they're 1.5 wide, how many can you fit next to each other? You stack them on a 5 amma wagon. So kama musif talasup talasa 3. Right. Because if you have 3, the width of 3 at 1.5 is 4.5 amos. So Pashale, Palga de Masa. So now basically you have the wagon. I should have brought some props. Okay, my bad. Anyways, you have the wagon, and then you have the boards lined up. There's only room for 3 sections of boards. Now just remember, FYI, because we said there's 12 wagons per board, they're basically stacked. If there was 3 stacks, it would have been 4 high, right? So 4 high and 3 across. So 3 across, and then between them, there is a half amma left, right? Now, if you go ahead and you have basically a half amma of space, okay, which is how many tefachim? This is 3 tefachim, right? 1 amma is 6, half amma is 3, right? So now you have what do you have there? So kishadle, so talasa, you have 3. Oh, excuse me, I just lost myself. Right? So kama was it plus. So pashale palgadan. So you have a half of amma left. So kishadale mar beni uveni kalava dummy. But I understand if you have 2 gaps of a total of 3 tefachim, which would mean each gap was 1.5 tefachim, you should be able to say love it between the boards. So if you're underneath the boards, because the wagons were a little higher, if you're standing underneath the boards under the space is only a tefach and a half. So if the space is only a tefach and a half, you would say lavud, like we discussed lavud yesterday, and the 2 spaces are considered to be connected. If it's connected, it's considered to be roofed, right? So Gemara says, no, who says that the crushim were on their width, the way that when they were 1.5, right? So they're put on the sides. In other words, they weren't this, right? They weren't this way. They were loaded this way. Okay, so they were 1.5 by 1. So instead of the width, the space taken up on the wagon was 1.5, it was a little smaller. It was only 1. So now Gemara says, okay, let's do the math now. So sumcha de keresh kamihavi. How much is the? What was the width of that? Kamihavi. So amsa 1 amma, right? Because it was 1 by 1.5 was the dimensions of the crushim. Besides, being tall, right? 10 ammas tall. So we say kamihavi. so how many can you put there? So Moisiv Arba. So you can put 4 there, right? Because now you can put 4 different stacks, and 4 different stacks, obviously, to get 12, you know, stacks of 3 and 4 across. So Pashalu Amsa, so you have 1 Amma remaining, which is 6 Tfachim remaining for the gaps. So Kishadale Mar Beni Ben. If you go ahead and put since there's 4 stacks, so there'll be 3 gaps right there. So each one, it would be only, if you say have 6 tfachim, right, divided by 3, each one is 2 tfachim. Each space is 2 tfachim, which is less than 3, and therefore you would say lavud. So so now you would say lavud. So Gemara says, okay, but before we get into the kasha, so since it's a little closer, there has to be one thing you have to remember. So you crush milamatan uvayan ama milamatan kalain ad kviyat. So shapir. Now, there's a machlekes of Sunsi and Amud Beis as to the dimensions of the crushim. Now, everyone agrees, right? It was 1.5 by 1. Okay. Now, since it was right, so now the question is the thickness. How thick was it? Everyone agrees also it was an am at the bottom. Okay. So the question is though, when it went up, okay, what did it come together like that, and it was a little pointier on the top, even though it was still 1.5 wide, right? But maybe the thickness, so if you're looking at it from the side, so it was thick on the bottom, and then as it went up, perhaps the boards got skinnier. So now remember, if the boards got skinnier and you lied it on the side, now there's extra space. So if you look at that, the picture, the diagram in 98A2, you can sort of see, I guess the shaded area is the crushim, and you'd see that each one sort of narrows, and therefore there's a possible ability to say lovin. So according to the opinion, you held that they became narrow at the top. So therefore, when you stack the boards, right, even though one end your spaces are only 1 amma, but since the other area the boards get thinner, therefore the gap in between will increase, and therefore you don't have lovin anymore, and therefore you can say, okay, that area underneath it was not covered, and therefore we see that the Rosh Hashanah was not covered. So that were well. But according to the opinion, holds that just like at the bottom, it was 1 amma thick, and so too at the top, it was also 1 amma thick. So Michael and Maymar, what are you going to say there? You have 3 gaps of 2 tfachim each. You just say love it. Therefore, any area underneath the wagons is considered to be covered, right? So Amrav Kahana Batabi. So the Gemara says, no, we're talking about a case about tabi. It's considered to be like they're like clothespins, right? Clothespins are connected. In other words, it's not. There was 4 equal spaces like this, right? It was actually 2 and 2 with 1 large gap in between the 2 and 2. If 1 large gap, 4 is taken up, right? So then you have a space of 1. So Michael, so I'm about to tabi heichamanachlu. Where was it? Agaba de'agala. So okay, fine. All right, so maybe you're right. Between the boards, it's possible to have an airspace of more than 3 tefachim, so you don't say love, and therefore it's considered to be uncovered. Okay, but remember that first brisa we said underneath the boards, right, and tachteim, underneath the wagon itself. So under the wagon we see is covered. So Amar Shmuel, turn the page. But you say those. We're talking about the wagon wasn't a solid wagon. Right, as you might imagine, a solid wagon, right? Rather, the wagon was just the stuff on the side with like beams going across that they could lay the crushim upon. But it wasn't something necessarily that was a full-floored wagon, and therefore the wagon in itself was not considered a roof. It was only a roof using the boards, the crushim that were on top of the wagon. Fine. Tana Rabbanan. Crushim. Now speaking of machlokes, we had crushim ilamatan oivein ama u'milan kolay v'hoichim ad ketzba. So at the bottom, the thickness was 1 amma, and as it went up, it went to the thinness of a finger. Shnei as the pasuk says, "You tamim," right? There should be tamim, right? There should be whole, right? What does that mean? The tamim, right? So you tamim al roisho. It says by the crushing they should be tamim al roisho. Later on, it says tamu nichrasu. The pasuk says in Yeshua, it says tamu nichrasu divrei Rabbi Yehuda. It says over there they're referring to I think it was referring to the water when by the Yarden. So then it split up and it stopped, right? It came up. And till it stopped. So just like over here, just like over there, it went up until it stopped, got thin. So to over here, the crushim, when it says tamim, is referring to the boards that they're wide in the bottom 1 amma, and then as the crushim go up, it gets thinner on top. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, as we'll have to remember his opinion as for this Amud, because we're going to go back and forth. And Rabbi Nechemya Omer, Kashem Shalamatan Oivin Amma, Kach Milamal Oivin Amma. Just like the thickness on the bottom was 1 amma thick, so too the 1 amma thickness on top is also 1 amma. Shneimar, as the pasuk says, Yachdov, they'll be together. Since they'll be together, now as Yachdov, it's all the same, it's universal. I Vaksiv Tamim, it says Tamim, so we learn from Tamim. Sahu, Delisa Shleimin, right? Delisa Shleimin, V'loi Lisa Denisra. That means that we should learn over here that they should be the crushim should be made from one piece of wood and not several pieces. That's what it means when it says tamim. The other opinion says yachtav. It sounds like they should all be the same thickness throughout. All right, so that tells you that no, that they shouldn't go ahead and they shouldn't be, not next to each other. They should be aligned all together. So according to the second opinion, according to Rabbi Nechemya, works out well, who says it's the same width all the way through. That's what the pasuk means. Right? Ushnei krashim tasa. In other words, over here, when they're describing now remember the way the Mishkan was set up. Now it wasn't 4 walls, right? It wasn't 4 walls. Rather, we say there was 3 walls, like a U, right? It was like a U, and the 2 sides and the back. Now, the 2 sides, each one, those were 30 long, as we're going to see, right? 30 long, each one 1.5. So it's going to be 20 on each side, okay? 20 on each side here. Now, how many were in the back? So it says over there were 6 in the middle together, okay? And there were 2 ones, and there were 2 ones on the side in the west, right? So basically, so when it says over there, so you have on the west side, right, you put 6 there, and then the 2 ends you have 1. Now, let's think about it. When you have the 6, right, the 6 is 6 times 1.5 is 9, right? And we said the width is actually, it was 30 by 10 was the dimensions of the Mishkan. So now, how do you have 8 boards, right? Because you really do the 8 boards there. Right. So where do you see that? Right. Because 8 times 1.5 is 12. Right. Not 10. And there's 10 in the middle. So we say no. That which we put the boards in. It wasn't put the boards in. Now, if I can imagine here, right? If I show you, it wasn't the fact that the boards went like this, right? It was the fact that the boards, when they outside, they covered up the width of the other walls. So if you can imagine, you have the north and south walls, and then when they put the crushim of the west wall, it didn't go inside it, rather went outside it to cover up the width. So if you look if you look at the west wall from the back side, right, you don't see the width of the north and south walls because those are covered up by the crushim. So now imagine this: if the width of the northern walls and the southern walls were each 1, right? If it's completely 1 the whole way, so therefore if you have a board that's covering up the width of 1, and the board is 1.5, so it's 1 of it is going to be basically covering up the width, and you have an extra half that's going to overlap it. So if you have 1 on this side, extra half, and 1 on this side, an extra half, right? So which is a half plus half is 1. So those are the 2 there, and then the other 6 is 1.5. 6 times 1.5 is 9. So the half plus half. So it's basically half plus 9 plus half, and therefore you get a total of 10. You have 10 amos as the width of the Mishkan. So it says
internal width. Internal.
No, if you're in the inside, it's 10.
Right.
If you're looking from the outside,
that's why it works.
12.
That's why it works with the width.
Right. So therefore, right. If you take your tape measure and you measure from the back side, it's 12. Right. From the inside, it's 10.
Right.
So the Asi Pusad Dahani, the Simchat Dahani. So he said the width of the 2 ones, they cover up the thickness of the north and south walls. So that everything works well. It knows if you hold the entire thickness was 1 the entire way through, everything works out perfectly. But if you hold at the bottom was a 1, and then it went up and it got skinnier. So right? In other words, it would go out because since this gets thinner, it would stick out. It wouldn't be flush. It would stick out, right? So Gemara says the shafilu ki turin. And it would be like a mountain. It would be like a mountain. Basically, it wouldn't stick out or do it right. No, wait, how was I doing before? You can see it. Wait, it wasn't sticking out like you could see it. Rather, they angle it, so therefore it would all come together, sort of like a peak, where you didn't have the jagged edges, but rather they would all sort of be rounded at the top and those ends. Fine. 2 dots. Now we say over there. Fine. So then we have a separate brisa completely sort of separate. Now, actually, I pulled out. So we have the crushim, right? We know there were poles. They were put. Oh, I didn't save it. They were put together. So the poles that went through there, the poles that went through the actual crushim. So they were rings on the outside. So as you can see here, let's see if I can put it. I feel like Eddie. I show the pictures here. But you see the one on the inside. That's going to be the one we're talking about. So now,
right. In the center.
It said in the top and bottom one, those had rings, right? So you say, that which we say, right? So it says, and the one that's inside this crushim, those were Tana B'nai Sayomi. Those would stand B'nais because why? Because those would basically go around. Those would bend. Since they weren't in crushim, we're in separate areas, they would bend and they would go through and they wouldn't be in any rings and they would be within the crushim of the Mishkan. And then it says Vasa Mishkan Tasa. Now we're going to discuss the curtains that were laid on top of the Mishkan. So remember, we have to remember the dimensions of 30 by 10. Okay, so let's see what's going on. And fine. So it says over there, so Tana B'nai Sayon, sorry. Vasa Mishkan Tasa Eser Yeros, and for the Mishkan you should make 10 Yerios, 10 curtains. So now each one was 28 by 4. All right, it was 28 by 4 amos. Okay, so it's 28 by 4. So let's remember that. So now, so shadi or chaya lupusa the mishkan. So now they would take the 28, right, the length, and throw it, right. So if this was the right, you can't really see it, right. If this was the mishkan, right, then they would throw it over the long way, right? They would throw it, the length of the long curtains would go over the width of the Mishkan. Now,
so you have now extra because the outside dimension is going
right. So now we have to figure out
3 and 3 dropping, right?
So the Gemara is going to calculate it right now. Right? The Gemara is going to very similar way you just said. So he says the Mishkan. So Kami Havi. So how long were they? As we just said, Esrim Matimni. Okay, they were 28 long. Now, Dal Esr Igra. If you go ahead and you take away, now we said it was 10 wide. Okay, so take away 10. So Pashalu Tesla, you have 18 left. So Tesla Hagisa, Tesla Hagisa. So you have 9 for this side and 9 for the outside. So now. The Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda was the one who said that it became thinner. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, remember the inside was 10, and there was no extra width of the wall. So immediately at the end of 10, it started to go down. Okay. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, right? So the Rabbi Yehuda migla amada. So therefore, it would hang 9. So the crushim were 9 into the sockets, right? The bottom.
Andrew
was inside the socket. So basically, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the only thing that was showing at the bottom, right, was the sockets that the pillars that the crushim went in. And the Rabbi Nechemia, according to Rabbi Nechemia, who said, no, it wasn't the width of 10 on top. It was actually 12 on top because the width of the walls, you have to also add an additional one. So how much you have left? So Migla Ama the crushim, Shadi Pasayu, so Migla Ama the crushim. Fine. Now, so he said, but when it according to him, instead of having 18 and therefore 9 on each side hanging down, you don't have 18, right? You actually only have 16, right? Because according to him, it wasn't 10 across on top. It was actually 12 across on top because you have an amma thickness of the walls, and therefore only 8 hung down. So therefore, when you have 8 hanging down, you have 2 ammas from the ground that are sticking up. The first amma is the socket, and then the next amma is 1 amma of the pillar of the kerish itself. Now, Shali Pasayu La'archan the Mishkan. Now, you go ahead, you sew together 10 curtains of 4 amos each, right? That's 40 amos. Okay. Well, actually, they wasn't really 10, right? It was really, they sewed 5 together and 5 together. As we'll soon see at the end, the last part of today's daf. It was 5 together and 5 together, and each one of those, and there were attached with rings in the middle. But anyway, the point is that you have the width of, if you sew, right, 10 by 10 curtains, each one 4 amos wide, altogether, you have 40 amos. So you go ahead, how much is that? Arboim. That is 40. So dal tlas and igra. Now we said earlier that it was the dimensions of the mishkans were 30 by 10. So how much do you have? So you take away 30. So dal tlas and igra. So pashlu asara. Therefore you have 10 hanging over the back side or the west side of the mishkan, because the front side, obviously, that's where people enter. So the back side of the mishkan.
Minus 1 for each one, each side.
So now, Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbi Yehuda, Michsai Amad Danim. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, it actually, right, it had 10. So Rabbi Yehuda, it would even cover, it would go all the way down to a 10. It would perfectly hang down to the ground, and therefore it would even cover the sockets. And Rabbi Nechemia, according to Rabbi Nechemia, who says that no, it wasn't 30 on top, it was actually 31 on top because you have the width of the krushim. Then Migla Amad Danim, then you would have one additional Amma showing of the sockets, because it would only hang down 9, and it was a complete, it was a height of 10, and therefore only the bottom amma was showing, and that was that of the socket. Now, and that was the first curtain that was put down. That was the Yiriyah Mishkan. Then they put down the Yiras Ha'izim. Now, Vasisa Yiras Ha'izim, La'oya V'chule, it says you make 11 of those. 11 of those, and those were 30 by 4, and you made 11 of them. So those are 30 by 4. So once again, you throw the length over the width of the Mishkan. The Mishkan, so Kami Havi, how much is that? Tlasin. So we say, so it's 30, right? Tlasin. So Dal Eser Le'igra, so you take away 10 of the width. So Pashalu, Eser Lahagisa, Ves Lahagisa, right? So if it was 30 minus 10 of the width, you have 10 hanging down to each side, and therefore, the Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbi Yehuda, Lemichse Amal Dadanim, he would hold, everything was covered. It would hang perfectly down. The outer Yiriyah would hang down basically to the ground, and therefore it would cover the entire keresh and even the sockets. And the Rabbi Nechemia, according to Rabbi Nechemia, who said no, it couldn't hang all the way down because they had to be a little higher because you still had the 1 amma extra on top. Then Nechemia Migla Amma Dadanim. Then they would go ahead and reveal the 1 amma of the sockets on each side. And Tanya Mehachisim learned Amma Mizeh Amma Mizeh. It says over there, in 1 amma on each side. So that was, the other one was extra because according to Rabbi Yehuda, it was extra, meaning because the bottom layer didn't cover the sockets, and this one covers the sockets on both sides. And according to Rabbi Nechemia, it says no, it would hang down. This one would go ahead and cover the entire keresh, as opposed to the bottom curtain. The bottom would not cover the entire keresh. Now, that was going widthwise. Now, what about lengthwise? So Shadi Basai, the Archaya de Mishkan. So now you have 11, not 10, 11 by 4. So Kami Havi Arbaim Ba'arba. So you have 44 total amos, right? When you go ahead and you sew them all together, Dal plus and Igra, and therefore you take away 30 of the length, Pashalu Arba Srin. You have 14 left. So Dal Tarti Lekifla. Now, there was, on the east end, they actually had a little overlay. It would hang over the edge a little bit on that side. So it would go to Amad Chassid. The pasuk says, "V'kavalta ziyiri hashishis al mul pnei ha'oyel." So you go ahead and you actually have, of the 14 amos, right? Because we have 14 amos to play with. You actually pull it a little bit, right? Imagine like a tablecloth, right? You pull it a little bit, 2 amos on the east side, all right? So if you had 14 total of extra material, so 2 on the east side, so Pashlu, Tarti Sari, you would have 12 for the west side. Now, how much would 12 cover of the wall? So Bish, Lama Rabbi Yehuda Hainich, it makes sense when Rabbi Yehuda Hainich, the pasuk says, Chatzi Yiriyah, half a Yiriyah, right? Half a curtain, so half of 4 is 2, right? Chatzi Yiriyah, Defas Tisrach. That part will sort of lay out like a train. In other words, so if you have 12 and the entire height of the keresh and the socket is a total of 10, so therefore you have 2, you actually have 2, that are hanging on the ground. If you have 2 hanging on the ground, look at the picture. Those of you at the art school, 98 B3, the second to last picture, right? So it shows 2 there because you have 10 covering the 9 of the keresh, the 10th of the socket, then you have 2 more. So therefore it's a half a Yiriyah, which is extra. What does it mean? Right? You have a half of it, tisach. So it says, no, tisach mechaverta means that there's a half amma more than its counterpart. The counterpart was, remember, was 1 up, when basically was 1 amma off the ground. And this one, in addition to not only cover the ground, it came one amma extra. So in other words, according to this opinion, it was still half a year extra than the one underneath it. And Tana the Beber Shmuel, so Lama Mishkan Daima, what was the Mishkan similar to? Leisha Shemelechas Bashuk V'Shaflu Ma'alchan Achra. A woman's walking the shuk, and her long dress is behind her, is dragging on the ground. So too, right? The curtains didn't come in the backside, right? It didn't come actually flush to the ground or a little above, as we saw before. Rather, the outer one, the one that made from the Izim, would actually go out a little bit and it would be on the ground. And finally, Tanar Rabbanan. So they said the crushim were actually chiseled out, and the sockets were sticking out, and the sockets were hollow. Right? There's a picture. Where's it? Oh, if you turn the last page, right? There's a picture on the complete bottom. It's almost the way it plugs in. So the the sockets were hollow. The nirin krasim blulois kichavim berakia. And that which I mentioned earlier, when they had the 10 curtains of the Mishkan, right? They would sew them all together, but they wouldn't sew them all 10 together. Rather, they would sew a group of 5 to another group of 5 and attach those with 50 rings in between. So it said the amount of rings that were sewn together, right, with the blue, with the tchelis, all that together looked like the stars in the sky. It was, I guess, a very beautiful sight. All right, we'll stop here. So Sunday morning, we're going to start a little earlier, 7 a.m., Mitzvah Shem. And then afterwards, I think the minyanim are at 8:30 over at KNS. Everyone have a wonderful day, wonderful Shabbos, and be well and take care.
Good Shabbos.
Shabbos, everyone.
Yes, your call.
Shabbos, Yoel.
Good Shabbos. You go. Mouse up once again.
Good Shabbos.
Thank you. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos.